My name is Beauregard, and I'm a winemaker. So the family's been involved in growing grapes since 1949. It was my great-grandfather who started it. And he was a Prohibition sheriff deputy, and his beat was actually Bonny Doon, and he worked through Prohibition. He retired from being a sheriff deputy and came up here and moved to Bonny Doon. Still pre-electricity, pre-paved roads, and you know, the older properties in Bonny Doon were all set by creeks or places where a lot of times they had caves to store their meats and stuff like that because there's no refrigeration of any kind. And so the property he's at was actually homesteaded, or he was at, my great-grandfather. My dad's there right now. When he came up, it was about 15 years after Prohibition. And when he bought the property, it was apple orchard. And they had pigs and chickens and cows and stuff like that. So it was a working farm. And it was a few years after he had been involved with it that he started planting grapes again. But the vineyard, that property there historically was a vineyard though, from like 1880s. My dad's been in the wine business his whole life. He grew up on the vineyards working with my great-grandfather as a kid. 1998, I decided I wanted to mess around with some home winemaking, and that evolved into a commercial wine business over a few years. And then, 10 years into it, we were able to buy this place.
The thing is, it was such a natural fit for us to move up here anyways, because of course this is where our vineyards were and are, and this is where Ryan grew up, and this is the wine we're making. But on top of that, before we had this location, before we were lucky enough to have this location, we were making our wine at Byington Winery, which is up these mountainous roads, beautiful property, but Ryan spent so much of his time and so much fuel, not to mention he can't get cell service, and I don't know if he's driven off the road with, 20 tons of grapes, so that's been a huge benefit for us, because now our newest vineyard's right next door. Barely have to haul it anywhere, and we've got all of the rest of our vineyards are within 3 miles of our winery now. So it's wonderful. That's a huge part of it for us.
We're about minimal impact winemaking, so we don't like chemicals and additives and manipulation. So our whole thing is we want like native fermentations. We pick the grapes when they're ready, so we don't add acid, we don't add nutrients or anything. So what we're trying to do in our winemaking is really show the sense of place, and the French call that terroir. And that's really what we're trying to do. So the flavor of our wines are the flavor of Bonny Doon. The vineyards up here all have their own character. Bald Mountain Vineyard is definitely the most mineral and the most acid driven. It's on sandy soil, a lot of limestone. And then the ones that have more loam tend to be like a richer, more full-bodied style. Or the ones that are on sandy or more poor, like well-drained, better drained soil, more poor nutrients, tend to be more acid-driven and mineral-driven. And personally, that's what I like. I want to do the tasting of Bonny Doon because Bonny Doon is my home, and this is where we grow our grapes. And I'm a firm believer in the French style of winemaking. They make wines where they grow wines. In California, a lot of places, they truck it all over the place. And then there's the winery that's making wine, but the grapes are from all over the place. And so I want to be really just focused on Bonny Doon. Grew up here, I got family roots here. I really strongly believe that the grapes here are the best. At our winery gate, we're 1,310 feet. And we're only 3 miles away from Highway 1. The thing about Bonny Doon as a growing area is composed of the Santa Cruz Mountains in general, is it's the highest point in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and it's also the closest to the ocean. So we get the hot and we get the cold. And the ocean influence makes a lot of difference in Pinot Noir especially. The Lost Weekend name came from a movie that was out in the 50s. And the place had about 4 or 5 different owners. It transitioned a lot. There's an old family up here, the Weitzel's, and Tracy Weitzel was telling me that he thinks that the Lost Weekend was actually built in the 1880s. So it originally was a general store, later a saloon, and then later a restaurant, and then into Bonny Doon Vineyards tasting room for 25 years, and then now it's ours until I kick the bucket.